The old man has just passed the century mark, and his wife is pushing 91 hard. God promised to make him the father of a great nation. But his wife, Sarah, is as barren as the Gobi Desert, so what's the chance? The old man, Abraham, is prepared to settle for second best. God, I guess this slave boy, Eliezer, will be my slave, my heir. What Abraham is about to discover, folks, is that God never settles for second best. One night, God takes him out underneath the stars and turns to the heavens and says, Abraham, Abraham, you see those stars up there? Abraham, your descendants will be as numerous as the stars in the sky. Some days later, 3 men came to Abraham and Sarah at the oaks of Mamre and tell them the very same thing. And do you remember what Abraham and Sarah do? They laugh. They laugh to keep from crying. They laugh at the preposterous notion of finishing with dialysis and going to get diapers. They laugh at the thought of Lamaze classes and breastfeeding, of putting in their annual Christmas letter that their baby was born in a geriatric ward and Medicare picked up the tab. Eliezer, God, I guess the slave boy will be my heir, is what Abraham said. God, you're nuts, is what I would have said. It can't happen. Can't it? Go read, folks, Genesis 21. And they delivered their firstborn son, whose name happened to be Isaac, which incidentally was the Hebrew word for laughter. And generations later, 2.1 billion people named themselves to be Christians, the largest religion in the world. It's crazy, some of the things God says and does, but folks, don't bet against him. Now, there are people in today's culture who will tell you that God is no longer in the miracle business. Oh. Go to Google and type in miracle stories, and there on your screen will be 22.8 million sites. Oh, come on, Dave, it can't happen. You can't crash land an A320 Airbus in the Hudson River and expect that nobody will die. Sully Sullenberger did. And not one person died. And folks, I hope there is nobody in this room here this morning who's naive enough to think that Sully Sullenberger was the only one in the captain's chair. Don't bet against him. Oh, come on, Dave, you can't expect something out of nothing. I think it was John Ortberg who told that story of Toby. Goes to Ethiopia on a mission trip and comes to an 11-year-old kid with no shirt at all. And the kid asked Toby for his torn, tattered, smelly t-shirt. And Toby didn't have anything left. So he turned and walked away. And that encounter bothered him for the rest of his trip. Remember the story, John, in that book? Toby goes back to Michigan and sets up a t-shirt drive called the Give the Shirt Off Your Back. And the marketing plan took. And Toby collected, count them, 10,000 t-shirts. How much does it cost to send 2 tons of T-shirts overseas? They got a cost from the UPS, $65,000. Toby didn't have the money. Somebody put Toby in connection with somebody called the Supporters of Sub-Saharan Africa, who just so happened to be sending a plane of supplies to the African continent. And yes, they could take the T-shirts. There was one huge problem. They were only going to one country, and they could not change their route. Would it be possible if they sent the T-shirts to Ethiopia? Don't bet against him. Oh, come on, Dave. You're talking to a medium-sized congregation here. How do you expect common old, little old, run-of-the-mill congregations to do miracles? I think it was Fred Craddock who told of a congregation in Wisconsin. No, it wasn't Wisconsin. Sorry, Bryn. I believe it was in Washington State somewhere, where the pastor stood up on Sunday morning and preached on that text that none of us want to preach on or hear, the one that says, sell everything you have and give to the poor. Well, the pastor stood up there and he laid it on the brothers and sisters. Now, I know some of you here weren't expecting this, but we'll be here all afternoon. By the end of that day, in this lower middle class congregation of 300 to 400 people, they brought boats, cars, jewelry, checks, money. They sent it all to the poor in Namibia. A little over $3 million. You one of those people that still thinks that God's not in the miracle business? God, guess this slave boy named Eliezer will be my heir. God, I don't suppose that my marriage can be saved. My cancer could be cured. My sins can be forgiven. I don't suppose you'll guide me along this job search or be with me when you seem to be most absent. God, I don't suppose that the pain of my loved one's death will ever give way to the hope of resurrection. God, are you still in the miracle business? Folks, don't bet against him. Because if I have learned one thing in 29 years of ministry, it is this. Never use the words God and can't in the same sentence. Never.